anyone know what happened to Ollie Stone? Because he only bowled 3 overs in that massive second innings, I think it was, from, was it Derbyshire that Warwickshire were playing? And I'm wondering, sorry, Northants, I keep thinking Derbyshire, it was Northants, but he only bowled 3 overs, I think, in the second innings. And it was a massive score. It was, I don't know how many overs they batted for in the end, but they saw out the game. And it seems odd to me that he would have only bowled 3 overs when there were so many overs going. But I haven't seen anything about him having an injury problem. I just wonder.
Well, he's gone for a scan. He's gone for a scan, according to reports. He's another one who's been absolutely plagued by difficult injuries and we've kept him out for a long time. There's so many of England bowlers. And as I made the point yesterday, that so much of the England setup now is geared towards wrapping their bowlers in cotton wool, and we're still seeing the exact same number of injuries for fast bowlers that we ever have done. So maybe we should go back to first principles and say you get fit for bowling by bowling, place them well, cricket.
There may be something in that, who knows. Anyway, the teams are on their way back.
For me to go?
Yeah, they're on their way back to the middle. I'm just going to bring you up to date with who's going to be on for you for the first session of the afternoon. It's going to be Fred on ball by ball for the first time today. If you've had enough of Fred, well, tough luck, you've got some more of you. You've got some more of me on Twitter, and it's Dave, I think, who's coming in strong. So was it Jono? I know they did a swap, and I'm not quite sure who swapped for who, but
I believe Dave is the replacement.
Okay, well, it's
someone's had enough of talking to me.
It's Dave fucking me, you muppet.
Oh, it's the bear shouting. Well, the bear's shouting.
It says Bear Jingles. Bear Jingles.
No, because
Jingles Bear.
No, I'm not. Dave can't do it, and Dave didn't want to miss his ball by ball slot, so I took over from Jono for his.
That's right. Okay. All right. Well, do your jingling best, Bear, and get us sorted.
I will do. The batsman. We have this man. And we also have
Azam, no, he doesn't, because he's a cricketer from Pakistan and he's a really good one. Thank you very much.
And to open the bowling, it sounds like it's going to be the man with a headband.
Sweep the leg, Rory.
Got the best headband around. Something has got to keep her down. Got the best headband around. Your ego ain't gonna beat you down. Got the best headband around. Even though your hair is doing down.
Yes, it's Stuart Broad. He's going to be bowling to Shah and Masood, who batted through the opening session. He's beaten a few times, as you'd expect, but he's still there as Broad, right arm round the wicket from Masood. Plays forward. He thought he was playing a defensive shot, but the ball went past the outside edge. And so, which of you is going to be reading tweets?
It's me, would you believe? Which could be all sorts
good luck, tweeters.
Problems. Denzel Dumfries from Galloway 15 minutes ago during our chat at lunch says, while Middlesex fans will no doubt be basking in the aftermath of beating their local rivals, they will surely be equally delighted that one of their own recent favourites helped Yorkshire over the line against Durham. Not to mention, of course, this is my addendum, Paul Sterling, of course, against England.
Full ball on leg stump. It's turned into the leg side. A good sprawling stop at forward square leg from Bess, prevents any run. Good luck to David the Lamb. I don't suppose it went down all that well in the Middlesex changing room, where there were issues towards the end of last season, but that's all water under the bridge now.
Yes, indeed. Jeff Perkins has a point to make about Samit Patel. He said maybe Samit and his team have asked Gary Naylor's advice on the best position for him to bat.
The value of Samit Patel at number 8 as Broad bowls outside the off stump, and Masood defends. Or are we calling him Shan? Are we calling him Masood? What are we calling him? The TV calls him Shan.
I call him different things depending on my mood.
It's Shan. It sounds like a weather girl, Shan. That's what it would
I suppose so, yeah. Jay Grover says, what a jolly interesting lunch stroke dinner time chat. Thank you all very much. Well, thank you.
And you know what? We did it all off the cuff because we were supposed to be doing an interview with Dr. Kashif Ansari, who's always entertaining, if not always correct. But he wasn't available, so you had to make do with Tony and myself wibbling about county cricket, what we like doing. 4 balls outside the off stump from Shan, who is not tempted into playing a shot.
Messi Jones has moved into position. He says, "Evening all. The very first words I hear as I tune in are, 'It's fucking me, you muppets!' Oh, the sweet relief as I know I'm home again."
Well, I was sitting off camera. You're Mid-off's quite deep. Sibley is at cover. The backward point. Looks like Anderson from here. Archer's out at deep backward square leg. And Stuart balls at mid-on, so that's a field, a very orthodox field, ready for around the wicket off-spinner to a left-hander. Comes in again, bowls again a short, flat ball, which is put away into the offside, fielded by Sibley, but again they take a single. Yeah, I think a bit rusty.
He's sort of got away with it. Take a single off that delivery. He hasn't bowled for a while.
No.
And he doesn't have too many sweepers, although he's got one now at backward point, which off spinners often do nowadays. And actually they spread a bit for Babar. There's a deepish mid-wicket as well as a deep backward square leg.
Here's Bess. Bowls, a bit short. Babar again can play it off the back foot. Very tousely haired at the moment, Bess. One of those who hasn't visited the barbers. Wind ruffling the top of his hair, licks his fingers. Spins himself a catch, and then spins himself another catch. He's just walking in, bowls on the leg stump now. That's clips poke that short leg. You can hear the soft sound of the ball hitting the padding under his trousers and about his shins, as well as wearing it. 80 for 2. Archer loosening up on the boundary edge. Bess again, strides up, bowls, and Babar Azam will pick up one, flicking the ball to deepish mid-wicket. Sibley there is not actually on the boundary, but lurking about 20 yards from the edge. It's 81 for 2, with Shah Masood on 37, Babar Azam on 21. Bit of a range finder.
It was a bit rusty, that, but there was no sign of much turn either. It's just sense that because it's a bit drier, it might turn later in the game, but I'm not sure it's going to turn earlier in the game. Although Pakistan, of course, have got 2 wrist spinners, which is really quite exciting, and they're liable to get more spin. Babar would have come across Don Bess down at Taunton, although how many games they played together, I'm not sure, because Babar obviously played T20 and Don Bess has scarcely played a T20 game for Somerset. The odd championship games, that will play 1 or 2 down there. I think Don will be aware of how good he is.
I think he will. Broad's on his way, bowls to Babar Azam. It's a low full toss, he drives for 4. Not sure what Broad was up to there. Looking for something, but it's hit straight past into the boundary below us here for 4 runs. So a second boundary in the last few minutes of Babar Azam. That was a gimme, but the stroke earlier off Anderson was just poetry. That was a gift. You often see that from Broad.
No.
A low, full, straight full toss.
And he got full value for it.
Certainly did.
Pumped it wide of the left hand of Archer at mid-arm.
85 for 2.
Batting's looked rather easier after that.
I was on 25. Ball will be cross about that. He hates giving away runs. Up he comes again. Bowls to Babar Azam. Oh my word, let that go. And it shaved the off stump. I think they're all having a look at that, and Babar Azam had a little smile on his face as he looked back just to make sure that the furniture was still intact. Which it was, but very close indeed. Ball got that ball to come back a little bit.
Had 6 boundaries and 8 overs and 2 balls since lunch, just 6 in the 25 overs before lunch, 3 of which were off the edge. Jimmy Anderson's no ball, just his 5th in his last 65 test matches going back to December 2013, over 2,200 overs in that time.
And the first to be called remotely, in goes Broad, bowls outside the off stump. People wonder what I'm talking about. The third umpire is calling no balls in this match. So it's an experiment for the series.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I didn't know that. I mean, they were doing it in the one day.
They were
down
well, they're doing it with a view to introducing it to all World Test Championship matches.
I bumped into Mike Burns, who was doing the third umpire in one of those Irish games, and he was responsible for watching this. He said, "God,
It's exhausting.
there's no respite."
No, it must be exhausting. Broad bowls, it swings away at Babar Azam forward, close to mid-on. They're just looking at a screen with a line and a boot, are they?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And it's sort of normally at third umpire, you have moments of great leisure, and then suddenly you're
thrown into the spotlight, but he said he can't relax at all. You've got to watch every ball. Hopefully it will act as a sort of deterrent maybe for bowlers to really give themselves a bit more leeway, and then maybe the third ball he can't relax completely, but
Ball's chuntering about something. It's something with his run-up or where he's landing, something like that. Grips the ball very deliberately and goes in over the wicket to the right-handed Babar Azam, who's forward, a beautifully straight bat. Broad fields in the follow-through. Have we established it's Federer who throws his bandana into the crowd? Come on, Andy, what have you been doing?
I don't have bandana stats on my database, Aggers.
yes, but you've got this broad general knowledge, haven't you?
I think it's Roger Federer.
Federer is definitely a bandana thrower, but I'm sure other players.
You didn't look it up.
Okay, he throws 68% of his bandanas into the crowd.
It is humouring me, Andy.
When he's won.
Yeah, well, I think he does. Victor?
Well, he probably does.
Okay. He goes broad over the wicket. Is there any bowls? And Azam allows that to go through. Stopped by Buttler rather than taken because it kept rather low and moved away. So that's the end of the over. And Pakistan at 85 for 2. More from Victor, and then Isha Gur's coming in here.
He looks a little bit disgruntled, Stuart Broad. I think that's because there's no magic out there at the moment. The pitch
Possibly. I can't.
You wrote it that long ago.
He played. Abdul played. Because you didn't want to start cover driving his googly, or you were in trouble when you were batted.
His son plays in Australia.
Yeah. He's no longer with us, sadly.
No. As Archer ambles in, and I was outside the off stump, and Masood raises his bat to allow it to pass. The end of the over, 90 for 2. I think his son's actually moved back to Pakistan, so we can see if he can make it at age group level and then try and get in to the Pakistan.
Well, I suspect that Abdul did quite a bit of work with Yasir Shah, and they're sort of similar cricketers. Abdul's a fantastic wrist spinner, but a wonderful, mercurial bowler with a sort of temperament of a fast bowler in a way, always at you, fizzing the ball down. Quite an emotional sort of bowler, and with wonderful variety. And you know, he was around just before the Shane Warnes came along. He helped to rebirth the art of wrist spin.
As Babar Azam is still in his crease. Bess bowls him inside-out drives, past extra. Chris Woakes dropped his shoulders as if to say, well, that's definitely going for 4. Then chased after it and then realised he had to give up again because that was sweetly timed from Babar Azam. Beautifully played.
It was. I mean, it was slightly over pitch, but the authority with which he just beat the field and hit it so crisply, though not hard, all the way to the boundary. Big boundaries here. He has looked good since lunch.
Built up a 50 partnership from 109 balls.
Sandy, 34 of 56 deliveries, Babar Azam. Masood, 15 of 53. And that partnership is Bess. Past the stumps, bowls flatter to Azam, who pushes to the offside and takes the single, goes to 35, 95 for 2.
There you go.
James in Heatherset emails, I got a copy of Vic's Ultimate One Day Cricket Match book for a birthday when I was a child. Lucky you, as Bess goes to Masood, is turning it around the corner, falls in front of short leg, no run. Loved the variant where I had to put myself on to bowl and take Viv Richards' wicket, but then lost the game by keeping myself on too long. The variant.
Well, I don't remember variants, but there you go. Is that a scientific term?
Must be. As Masood drives to mid-on and sets off immediately. Stuart Broad on the net. His toes runs towards the ball, but they've come through comfortably. Shah Masood to 38, 96 for 2. Strong breeze blowing across the ground here at Old Trafford as Bess bowling to Azam, who leaves the ball.
Turned and bounced a little bit. It was wave off stump.
Yeah.
Brought a smile from Don Bess.
It bounces it above.
Yeah, well taken. Buttler had to jump to take it, going chest high. You can do that again.
As he comes through again, Azam drives again in that same area out to deep cover. Jofra Archer at deep point is running round and won't be able to stop it as it goes into the advertising sponge. It's the sound off the bat from Babar Azam. He really is getting into a nice groove and flow as Pakistan bring up the 100, 2 wickets down, 37 overs having been bowled.
Well, you've got no margin for error against Babar. Bess bowls an attacking line. He does try and keep it outside off stump, which is aggressive. It's also more difficult because it's a higher risk line to bowl, because if you get it wrong, there are spaces out there. And Babar, that was just fractionally over-pitched again, and he missed the field again. He timed it so well too. So, you know, he's already shown why we reckon that of all the touring batsmen, he's the classiest act this summer.
He's giving himself time as well. What was he, Andy? 2 off how many?
24, for certain 24 balls before lunch.
4 off 26 and got a 2 off the last ball before lunch.
Here comes Archer again, bowling to Masood. Full off his legs, out to the deep square boundary. He just clips it away. It's long boundaries here, but that finds its way out there very, very quickly. Masood moves to 42, 104 for 2.
Someone else bought it.
Do you want to read this one, Vic?
Well, Stuart bought it in the late. He was out for 6. He went for a quick single, but was run out by Roger Harper. You see, he didn't look who was fielding where.
As Archer moves away from us, bowls to Masood, who's defending off a good length on the leg stump.
Although he claims I didn't tell him that Harper was in the covers at the time.
Yes.
But I expect you had to read between the lines.
The book said, if only you'd remembered that Harper was fielding in covers, exclamation mark, or similar, even though no information was fielding.
He must have lost a page somewhere.
That's exactly what happened.
Sorry about that. But you could have another go, you see.
Yeah.
You can read it again.
A pound down the drain as Masood defends one away outside the off stump to Gully. Tumbling dive from Rory Burns, who collects the ball and tosses it to extra cover.
Do you know, someone wrote to me from Holland asking whether they could use this format. So I said yes, and they sent me a copy. I've got a Dutch copy of not the same game, but the same format. I have no idea who wins or what happens because it's all in Dutch.
There we go.
It's a long time, this was.
They should reintroduce it, Vic, as Archer pushes away. Bowls now down the left side. Has he got something through to Buttler? No. Masood just moving his bat out the way as he looks to play initially. And there's a half appeal from behind the stumps, but I think they realise that didn't catch anything that goes through.
Zipped through, but it's looked a completely different game since lunch, hasn't it?
51 in 12 and a half overs since lunch, 53 for 2 from 25 before lunch.
Open stance from Masood, just crouches ever so slightly in, back in defending to the offside this time, covering the ball from Archer. Good length outside the off stump from him, building up his pace, 87 miles an hour. David in Solihull. I owned a copy of Vic's book. The first time I played England, lost to a 6 off the last ball, which, as Andy said, was relatively successful for England in the 80s. If it is worth 162 quid, I am off to see if I still have it. Yes.
And I don't think he's going to read it again.
There's going to be plenty available online now, as Archer comes around the wicket to the left-hander, who again gets back and defends down the track. At the end of the over then, Shan is on 42, Azam 39, and Pakistan 104 for 2, and these two going nicely for Pakistan. Not as much in the air from England, the ball being 38 overs old.
No, he's having a chat of Dominic Bess with Joe Root, because there's the problem of Babar, who latches on to anything that's slightly over pitched and just driving him through the covers. Whether he's going to look for reinforcements on the offside or whether he's going to try and change the line he bowls. I think he might put his boundary fielder. He's had a man at sort of backward point.
Yeah.
Really for the shortish ball that gets cut or dabbed down there, I think he might make him go a little bit straighter. In fact, they're bringing a man over to the offside, so an extra fielder on the offside, which suggests that Bess will continue to bowl this off-stump line, but he's got less protection on the leg side now. I just wonder, will Babar really assert himself by just dragging the ball from outside off onto the sparsely populated leg side there?
This interesting is he put James Anderson out deep backward square as Bess bowls to Azam, who drives again out to deep cover. Jofra Archer takes the ball about 15 metres off the boundary as he comes through for 1. Babar moves to 40. 105 for 2 now, Pakistan.
Okay, here's the rest of the world. I never got any royalties for this, you know.
Now's the time, because Bess around the wicket to Masood, the left-hander.
It's not a bad
plays
team,
it back
man.
down the pitch. Daniel Jenkins' own Vic Mark's book, I Still Have It. Rest of the world team is Gavaskar, Jeff Marsh, Richards, Crowe, Border, Imran Khan, Dujon, Harper, Marshall, Kadir and Reid. As Masood still in his crease. Ball is nearly onto the stumps as Ben Stokes chases after it. Tries to dab that down at the last second. Shah Masood, he comes through for one. Goes to 43.
Just get it on a bit quicker than you thought. And they thought about an appeal. Was it one of those that hit the pad before the bat? But I don't think it was. It was certainly straight enough.
Yeah, just looking at the replay, it dragged back and he plays it onto his pad.
Yeah.
As it comes through. Bess then, here he comes again to Azam, who's forward and playing it to mid-on, comes through swiftly for a single. Throw from the captain, Joe Root, to Buttler. And Babar moves to 41, so rotating the strike easily at the moment, these two, 107 for two.
I'm just having another look. You sure it didn't hit the card first?
Ooh.
And if it did, they should have reviewed it.
Bess fights this one, it's on the full as Masood plays it out to the deep backward square boundary. Jofra collects it with his left hand, turns and throws in one movement up and over Joss Buttler. And it is taken by Ollie Pope, short leg. The score goes to 109 for two. Masood to 45. Is Bess through his action. Masood edges, does he edge as it goes to Buttler? It hits the edge of his glove onto the floor. Well, was that an opportunity? We'll have to look at the replay. Anyway, a few more words from you, Vic. It's Pakistan 109 for two, and in will come Simon Mann.
That did spin. I think it didn't take the edge, but we need confirmation of that. Oh, I don't know. I'd like to see that again. I'd like to see the LBW shot again, or the non-reviewed LBW. Bess's reaction was one of anguish, so we'll keep an eye on the screen. If it is, it was a clear chance to Joss Buttler behind the stumps.
Looks as though he might well have nicked that.
We're having another look. Nico
hit the left side of his left glove. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, that's the chance.
Yeah.
I'm afraid.
Here's Archer going into bowl to Babar Azam. It's outside the off stump, quite close to off stump though. Babar let it go through, good judgment. 109 for two, good session for Pakistan.
They needed that
since lunch. And there was that LBW shout as well. It was bat and pad very close together in terms of making contact with the ball. It's hard to say actually. It's almost, you don't see it very often, simultaneous contact, but it might well have been on the LBW shout or the half shout, and they decided to ignore it. This is Archer going into bowl to Babar. It's full, it's driven nicely, but straight to mid-off, where it's picked up by Woakes. And there is no run. Babar's playing a different game to everyone else we've seen today. Shan Masood has dug in, worked hard. I mean, not quite playing like Dominic Sibley, but a Sibley type role really, in trying to wear down the bowlers. But a little bit more elegantly. It's 45 not out. Babar's 41, short outside the off stump and crashed away for four by Babar Azam off the back foot, and he barely bothers to move. In fact, he strolls down the pitch to have a chat with the non-striker Shan Masood. That's the sort of stroke that deserves a crowd, and everyone standing up and applauding, cheering from Pakistan. Beautifully played. It was a bit short and wide, and it got what it deserved. And Babar Azam now is level with Shan Masood. And came in the 19th over. Archer bowls to Babar and short ball, and Babar bends at the knees and allows it to go through to Joss Buttler. The weather is closing in.
It does look bleak on the left, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's getting darker, and there's a sheet of grey coming away to the left. The light's beaming down now, and there's some suggestion. Once it starts, we might be struggling today for the rest of the day, but let's hope not. Forecast has changed a bit away to the right where it's going to be some blue sky, but that's gone. Archer moves in and bowls another short ball, and Babar Azam, like a boxer there, bends at the knees and then Staggers back towards the rope.
It's a quick ball.
nearly a century as well, 113 for him. They added the jeopardy and the excitement by getting out, but it was the wise old head of Kevin O'Brien and the youngster 20-year-old Harry Tector who saw Ireland home in some style. A thrilling match, a terrific game of cricket.
At the halfway point, Michael Carberry, I think many people, not all, but many people would have been thinking, come the end of it, we're going to be looking back on sensational knock from thinking, come the end of it, we're going to be looking back on sensational knock from Owen Morgan, helped out by a very impressive young Tom Banton. We thought Ireland might take it close, but in the end we're talking about three very special innings, aren't we, of Owen Morgan, add to that Paul Stirling and Andrew Balboni.
Absolutely, and I've seen it time and time again in county cricket. Someone like Paul Stirling, he's a very, very dangerous operator. He's got good experience at international level. It hasn't happened for him in the first two games, but boy, tonight he found his rhythm, found the tempo. He got off the mark with a beautiful punch boundary, and he never looked back. And the support he found in his captain, who again was short of runs, short of confidence. You ask in a situation, you ask your senior men to stand up. Both of them did. They set a magnificent platform. That was probably one of the best one-day partnerships I've seen in a long time. Considering the circumstances, considering they come off two really bad defeats. Steering a third one in the eye as well, and the composure. They just took the right options. It didn't look frenetic. It didn't look rushed. It just good tempo, one-day batting. And look, England it'll be a sharp reminder for England. Although yes, they're world champions. Yes, they've played some great cricket over the last 4 years. But it's a sharp reminder, I think, for this England setup that it's a game of constant improvement. You cannot take your foot off the gas against anybody.
It was a mature performance from Ireland, this, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
And the way they batted, and nothing better to show that off, but boundaries being found, whether it be the fours or the sixes, but then next ball, just a little push.
Yeah, and that was the thing for me that I liked. It was Stirling would find the boundary, or Balboni would find the boundary, but then it was the bits in between, the little cute glides, the pushing, the way they played Adil Rashid. There'd been all sorts of trouble against Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali to some degree. They've shown Moeen Ali a lot of respect in the first two games. Moeen Ali ran up 10 overs to 35 in the first game. They're playing beautifully.
Let's get some reaction, shall we? Nikesh Regani is with Paul Stirling.
Paul, very well batted today. A special day for Irish cricket.
A win against England in their own turf. It's pretty nice to get across the line, and most importantly to get 10 points on the board in this new league, so we're delighted with that. It's a pretty solid performance in the end.
What were you thinking at the halfway stage? Because at one point, you had England 44 for 3, but then that wonderful partnership when Owen Morgan got going, it looked as though they were on for quite a bit more. You must have been quite pleased to pull them back to 328, even though, on paper it looks pretty tough.
Yeah, no, I think a huge credit has to go to our bowlers. To get the middle order wickets is quite tough these days in white ball cricket, and we've done that consistently on this trip, so we're delighted to see that continued on, and to be able to pay England back the way we did, even though we had them 3 down early, massive partnership, and then it could have been high 300s, even into the 400s to chase. So the fact that we got a couple of quick wickets there in the middle really helped us.
Looks a very good wicket out there, and it certainly played pretty true. Obviously that helped your game.
Yeah, I think so. It came on the bat pretty nice as the innings went on. It was still tricky enough in the first 5 overs. It was maybe not coming on quite as well, and then when the lights kicked in and the ball got a little bit older, it got nicer to bat, and you could sort of squeeze boundaries behind square, which was nice.
What does this mean to you to have contributed so well to such an important victory in the history of Irish cricket?
No, it's huge. We need to keep improving every time we play cricket. We only play against the big teams now, and we've got to keep putting in performances, and we need to keep improving. The first 2 performances were disappointing, to say the least, but we were a bit scratchy. We haven't played in a while, and it was nice to get the cobwebs out, even though they were one-day international matches, and then we were able to put in a good performance today. But we need to keep our standards as high as they were today to moving forward.
When you were run out, it looked as though England felt they may have just had a sniff. What was the feeling amongst yourself in the dressing room?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. We had so many wickets in hand. You always feel confident that you can chase, especially when the run rate hadn't really crept over 8.5. So yeah, we probably did give them a sniff. The two batters in gave them a chance by getting out, but we hopefully had enough in the tank still to come in, and we managed to get there with a few balls to spare.
Absolutely, and I suppose if you're chasing over 300 odd against England, the key is get off to a good start, set a platform, make sure Kevin O'Brien's there at the end. He's been there and done it before, of course, Bangalore 2011. How crucial was it just to have somebody out there with that nous and that experience?
Absolutely, it's key. Especially it was nice for Harry Tector as well to finish as well. A youngster coming into the side, so to have those two at the crease will only help them both. And it seems like Kevy's getting better with age. To be honest, he seems to be in the best nick of his life. So hopefully that continues for a few more years yet.
That's great, Paul. Thank you very much. Back to you guys in the box.
Paul Sterling talking with Nikesh there. Sorry, Nikesh. It's Nikesh Regani doing the interviews out there tonight, and there'll be more to come. Michael, Andrew Balbirnie ahead of the game today said, look, I'll be back with you in just a moment. David Willey is now being interviewed.
David, commiserations on this evening, but obviously, for yourself, back in the side, and overall, you'd be pretty pleased with your performance in this series?
Yeah, it's been disappointing tonight. Obviously, on a personal level as well, with the ball towards the back end, I was a bit disappointed, but, as I said, it's been great to be back out wearing the England shirt. I wasn't sure whether I'd get another chance, so, I've enjoyed every minute.
And I suppose on an evening like tonight, it's a new wicket, it played very differently to the other two in the first two games. Is that what you made of it? I mean, was 328 kind of a par score on this wicket?
Yeah, I think the pitch got better as the game went on today. Probably from where we were, we'd probably like to have got a few more really, but I think if you've got 330 on the board, you're always in the game, but credit to them, they played well.
I suppose a point you mentioned there, you never knew if you're going to wear the shirts ever again back in the side, and I suppose you answered everybody in the best way possible. 5 wickets in your comeback game, man of the series, you feeling the ball's coming out better than ever before?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of that is the enjoyment as well. I'm enjoying the competition and being out in the middle, which probably over the last 12-18 months I've lost a bit of that, so I feel like I'm in a decent place in my cricket, and I play at my best as well. I'm enjoying it.
It's a very different look in England one-day international side here for them last time they played in the World Cup final 380 odd days ago, whenever it was last July. Guys like yourself were in and around that squad, but didn't quite make it in the end, which would have been hugely disappointing for you. But yourself, Sam Billings, there have been some very big positives for England in this series.
Yeah, I think if you look around, the guys that have been in this group, in the training group, there's some brilliant white ball cricketers in England at the minute, and breaking into that side's difficult. I was there for a while and I got left out, but I'm under no illusion, it's an unbelievable side. They've just won the World Cup, so places are hard to come by, and when you do get an opportunity to get in, you've got to make the most of it.
Just a final question on the World Cup Super Series. Of course, you mentioned there the points. How do you think that's changed the dynamic really of games like this, where you've won the series, you're coming to the final game, you've still got 10 points at stake? Does that change the dynamic at all?
I don't really know about this World Cup Super Series thing, to be honest, so I've absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
You just want to win games.
Just want to win.
Basically,
win every game,
it's for qualification for the 2023 World Cup. So every match basically has something riding on it. There are points up for grabs to qualify for that World Cup in India. But I suppose from your point of view as a team, nothing much changes.
No, I think before this series, Moles talked about we go out and we play this brand of cricket that they've done for the past 4 or 5 years, and that's no different. Whoever puts a shirt on and goes out there and takes the field. So we want to win every game of cricket, whether we're 2-0 up in the series or whatever. We want to win every game of cricket we play.
David, very well played throughout the series, and thanks for your time. Back to you, Kevin. Cheers.
Thank you. So Andrew Balbirnie, ahead of the game, Michael McNamee, said, we need to be a team that does more than just put teams in awkward positions and shocks every now and then during a game.
Absolutely.
So let's put this in context. Ireland now wants, because they will be playing more teams like England in the World Cup Super League, whether David Willey knows about it or not, they will be playing teams...
may have been joking there, I'm not sure, but I suspect he was.
So, from that point of view, the context that Andrew Balbirnie will play this line, a fantastic night, well done everybody, they're going to celebrate this win, of course they are, but he wants more of this, doesn't he?
Well, yes, and you've got to say, for the players who have experienced wins like this, I mean, goodness knows we have banged on about Bangalore 2011 so much, it's nice to get another one. but you don't want them to be just seen as little tiny, one-offs. You want to build on them. You want to challenge Afghanistan. You want to challenge, the West Indies. You want to challenge New Zealand. You want to challenge everybody and go into these matches believing you can give them a match, and on your day you can win them, and they can.
We mentioned Andrew Balbirnie. He's now talking to Nikesh.
Andy, very well played this evening, and congratulations, massive moment in the history of Irish cricket. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I feel ecstatic. Look, we played not our best cricket in the first two ODIs, particularly with the bat, so to come out with a batting performance like that really gives us a lot of confidence that we can go on and compete when playing the best in the world again, whenever those fixtures come about.
I was asking Paul this, what were your feelings at the halfway stage? Did you think 328 was about a par score? Did you fancy your chances all along, given the fact it's a new wicket, it looked to be playing quite well?
Yeah, I thought we got back into the game really well, having had a good start. I think Banton and Owen got a really good partnership, so to be able to break that and be able to sniff of restricting to 250, at 320 was maybe a bit frustrating, but look, we knew it was going to be a good wicket, and we just needed to apply ourselves with the bat, which we hadn't done in the first two games. We relied on a 21-year-old who hadn't played a lot of cricket. So yeah, it's just very satisfying to get that win.
Yeah, and you mentioned the sort of young makeup of your side, Curtis Campher coming in and playing so well in those first two games, and then tonight it was all about you guys with the experience and Kevin O'Brien there at the end as well. But that mix of experience and youth, I suppose it's finding that balance and making sure everybody sort of has their roles defined within the team. How have you found that, blooding people like Curtis Campher?
Yeah, they've been great. Look, the attitude is spot on. Look, we don't play a lot of cricket back home. We don't play a lot of List A cricket, so some of these guys are coming in with not a lot of experience. So the way they've come in and been able to adapt and assess conditions and stuff like that has been really pleasing. We're going to lose games of cricket, there's no doubt about that. We don't have the experience to consistently beat these teams, so what we can do is show an attitude that we can. So for the young guys and Harry Tector out there, second, third ODI, to be able to see us home is great for him.
Yeah, and I suppose those are the positives you can take from this particular series. In terms of tonight, of course, not just the win, not just the historic win, 10 crucial points in the World Cup Super League as well. Does that change the dynamic about how you go about your cricket?
Yeah, look, it's good. I said at the start of the tour, the three games, it's going to be tough and probably our greatest achievement to qualify for the World Cup automatically. We're going to have to be competitive on a consistent basis, and that's what I'm trying to do with this team, and all the guys are aware of that. So to come away from the world champions with 10 points is a great effort, even though we didn't play our best cricket in the first two games.
Just finally, where does this compare to Bangalore 2011?
Well, we had, Kevin O'Brien at the end there. It was just fitting that he was there and hitting the winning runs. It's huge. A lot of us were watching that as young 20-year-olds or teenagers, and you dream of one day doing that. So to be able to do that, for the country as well, not having a lot of cricket to play and not having a lot of cricket to watch, hopefully we've given us something to smile about.
Andrew Balbirnie with Nikesh Regani. Michael McNamee, back to you on this one, because Andrew Balbirnie, he cuts a really good figure doing these interviews, doesn't he? Win, lose or whatever. He sounds as if he has got a maturity. We talk about this maturity, but he's now got to take whatever is in that dressing room this evening, the way they feel, everything else that's going on, which is much bigger than cricket, of course, but everything else that's going on, and try and keep hold of that and take it forward. In any circumstances, that's not going to be an easy job, but that's the one he's got to try and pull off together with Graham Ford.
No, and he does feel the weight of the captaincy. He was absolutely gutted when Ireland blew a great chance to win the middle one-day international against the West Indies back in January. He will be delighted to get a first W in the column in 50 over cricket, and there are plenty of challenges ahead. Who knows when they will happen because of the pandemic, but I'm delighted for him. I'm delighted for Paul Stirling, who has expressed his difficulty coming Paul Stirling, who has expressed, his difficulty coming through lockdown. He was so, looked so out of sorts. And let's not forget, he was scratchy enough today, starting off with Delaney. He took a while to get into this. On another day, he might have got out. He stuck at it, and we saw the true Paul Stirling in the middle and the tail end of his wonderful innings.
It was a terrific finish to a series which had been very one-sided over the first couple of games, of course. England wrapping up the series victory after just game 2. It wasn't a dead rubber, this one, because of the points available for the World Cup Super League, and at the end of it all, England have got 20 and Ireland have got 10, and obviously they'll try and pick up on that over, well, who knows, over the next 18 months or 2 years as teams try and qualify for the next 50 overs World Cup.
That was Kevin Howells, Michael McNamee from Radio Ulster, and former England batsman and Surrey batsman Michael Carberry with the story of a special evening in Southampton. Those 2 centurions for Ireland. We watched that in the hotel bar here and saw Paul Stirling smashing it to all parts. Andy Bell burning. They must be absolutely delighted with picking up that win. Why are we talking about that? Why is cricket not on? I hear you cry if you're just joining us. Well, it's a fairly familiar sight in Manchester in this summer, insofar as it's very grey and the lights are on. There isn't actually currently much in the way of rain, surprisingly actually, because the blanket of cloud around us is distinctly doom-laden. It's a really, really thick, deep grey. The flags are still fluttering quite significantly, which is a hopeful sign, as we may see these clouds pass at some point before the close of play today. But it's very, very dark for 3:30. We can see an umpire walking off with an umbrella on. The ground staff are out there. All the covers, such as they are also on the pitch, and a small amount of the outfield. The drainage here at Old Trafford is absolutely fantastic, so even if we were to get a downpour of biblical proportions, which I'm not sure we're going to, but even if we were to get that, there would still be hope that things could be tidied up. Today is a complicated scenario, being the first day of the match. An hour can be made up of play that is lost, and of course there's the extra half hour allowed for the overs, so in theory we could go on till 7:30 today to make up the overs. They'd have to be out there playing by 7 o'clock. They have to be out there by 7 o'clock, so there's plenty of time, and according to the various weather apps that we have been looking at, there's a distinct likelihood actually that the rain will pass through by around 5:15. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we still end up getting another 20 odd overs in maybe today, and of course then those overs can be made up over the course of the rest of the match, 8 overs per day. So if we manage to get in another 16.5 overs today, then actually no overs will be lost in the match, because we'll have 98 over days thereafter. That will take the extra 32 overs. I see Mark Ramprakash is doing the calculations next to me. So that's the target for those of you who like a full 5-day test match. It may yet happen. Just to bring you up to date with what's happened so far today, Pakistan won the toss in cloudy and muggy conditions. They elected to bat. They've got 2 leg spinners in their side, so it wasn't the most difficult decision, but there were challenging conditions to bat in, and in the first session they really did struggle against England's bowlers, Anderson, Broad, Woakes and Archer, who bowled tremendously and picked up a couple of wickets. Abid Ali, the first to go, bowled by Archer for 16 just before actually about noon, and Azhar, the captain, LBW to Woakes. He reviewed it, but they lost the review as the impact was shown to be hitting and the ball was shown to be hitting the stumps. But that was England's last success. 43 for 2 the score was then. Pakistan, I suppose, struggled through manfully to lunch, but after lunch England's bowling's been a little bit more wayward. Dominic Bess, unfortunate perhaps not to get the wicket of Shah and Masood, who was dropped by Buttler, and not too difficult chance, didn't deviate much on the forward prod, got a thin edge but bounced off the gloves of Buttler. He also very nearly played on in the same over, but other than that Bess has been fairly rudely treated by Babar Azam, who has looked absolutely magnificent. We've seen a lot of him of course around the world and we know what a player he is, but he's treated us to some fantastically silky drives, a couple of glorious back foot punches. He looks completely in control of his game and he seems to have an enormous amount of time. Shan Masood at the other end, when he came at the start of this series, we were thinking a lot about Jimmy Anderson, how many times he'd got him. Well, Anderson had no success against Shan Masood on this occasion, and Masood has dug in well, 45 from 134 balls. Pakistan currently in quite a strong position on a pitch that is dry and expected to take turn later And with a forecast set to improve, and the sun, can you believe it? Yes, the lesser spotted fiery sun in the middle of our solar system is likely to appear in Manchester at some point, rumours have it, tomorrow and for the rest of the match. So it could get quite tricky to bat on, you'd imagine, towards the end of this test. England will be very keen, I'd imagine they'd be very keen to have a sort of hour and a half this evening. If they do get out there at about 6 o'clock, that might well suit their purposes with refreshed bowlers. Anyway, in the absence of actual live cricket, I have Mark Ramprakash and Azhar with me. I'm very delighted to say, two men of Surrey. In Azhar's case, men of many places, and in Mark's case, Surrey and Middlesex, we should point out.
No, in county cricket, I just played two counties, Kent and Surrey.
Well, right, in county cricket, yes, but around the world. But yeah. Surrey must be incredibly close to your heart, one would imagine. Probably the closest place to your heart, as it would be to any man who had ever encountered Surrey.
Yes, of course, why not? I'm a Surrey man and Surrey is my home. So, yes, Surrey all the way is bottom of my heart, I'm always a Surrey supporter and I will be remaining of my life.
For Mark, I suppose, your loyalties are divided equally between the two London-based counties, I would imagine, starting at Middlesex and then moving to Surrey in 2001,
actually, yes. And I'm really proud to be an honorary member of both clubs, actually. And, it was a big decision for me to move to Surrey. Essentially, I wanted to, I felt I needed a new challenge, and I was still interested in trying to push to play international cricket. Unfortunately, Middlesex had got stuck a little bit down in Division 2, and we're a team in transition. And Surrey, of course, had just won the championship and were incredibly successful, and with a host of internationals. And when I turned up, I was given a seat next to Saqlain Mushtaq in the Surrey dressing room. This magician of an off-spinner who invented the doosra, and he was great. I really loved playing with him. And of course there were many other international players. And then Azam Mahmood, I think we first came across each other around 2002 when Saqlain, I don't think, was available for the start of the season. And I remember Azhar, not wanting to embarrass you, but he took 8 for 60 against a very strong Lancashire team at the Oval, which meant that we won that game, and I think we got off to a flyer in the championship and pretty much cruised to the title in 2002. So what a pleasure it was to play, and that's what I think. Obviously, cricketers in county cricket, I've always been such a fan of me, wanting them involved, because my experiences have been so positive. I started at Middlesex with Wayne Daniel and then Desmond Haynes, who had a huge influence on my career. And to play at Surrey with Saqlain and Azhar, you're just exposed to a different way of thinking, a different way of playing the game. Whenever I toured overseas, I learnt so much about the game, and it challenged a lot of stereotype or thinking perhaps that we may have here. And you come across these guys who do it differently, and they've got such enthusiasm for the game. So it was a real pleasure, and look back on those times with a lot of fond memories.
As a result,
very kind of you, Dubai. Well, you are sitting here.
Yeah. As a result,
good words.
As a result of moving to Surrey, you ended up with the distinction, of course, being, I think, the only man ever to score 100 against all 18 counties, because.
Yes, well,
you had an opportunity to score one against Middlesex, I guess.
Well, part of the reason to move to Surrey was so I didn't have to face their attack, which was a good decision at the time. It was very, very strong. Also, it got rid of batting on that bloody slope at Lords. It was very challenging at times.
Did you not like that? I'm quite interested in that, because people often talk about bowlers, actually the challenge of bowling on the Lords slope, but there's that the balance, I suppose, keeping a balance on that slope.
Yeah, I think. There have been some very good players in international cricket who haven't made 100 at Lords, and you'd think that they should have. But I think Sachin Tendulkar is one, and there's certainly a couple of others that can't come to mind at the moment. But
there are some bowlers who find it very difficult to bowl with the slope, and then there's others who love it and they can utilise it to their advantage. And if they are accurate enough, it can really cause problems for the batsman. So anyone who's bowling from the pavilion end, which is traditionally where the great fast bowlers operate from, and the reason that would be is because there used to be a ridge, albeit quite a few years ago, but there used to be a little bit of ridge with a bit of uneven bounce just short of a length from that end. But anyone who can bowl at the pavilion end and make the ball just stay up the hill, because you're feeling that as a right-hander, all the balls are coming into you, down the slope, coming in, you've got to play. But if any bowler who can make it just hold up the slope, gives you a real problem as to what to play at, what to leave. So I felt that when I went across to the oval and the wicket was flat, horizontal, I mean, as well as a good deal whiter than the Lord's wickets as well. So, look, I enjoyed my time there. Of course, I was very lucky to bat behind Mr. Ward and Mr. Butcher opening the innings for Surrey as well. They often saw off the shiny red ball as well.
Well, that was a Surrey heyday, wasn't it? 1999 to 2003, 2004, when they won the 3 championships. Well, the side was packed full of internationals who Graham thought would have been there. You, of course. Mark Butcher, Ian Wars, you talk about Jimmy Ormond, Ed Giddins, Sacklane, Salisbury. I mean, it's an incredibly powerful side, but also the pioneering side as well. As when you arrived, I mean, T20 began in 2003, and Adam Hollyoake as captain, he seemed to sort of understand the requirements of it, didn't he? Pretty quickly, would you say?
Yeah, he was brilliant captain. I think I had one of the best captain I played under, and I remember me and Smokey were on the batting together, and it was my first or second game in 2003. I had a good season. I played 4 games in 2004, but the full season was 2003. I remember we lost, I think, 5 wicket against Essex at Chelmsford. I went and blocked a couple of balls, what was half volley first up. So Smokey after the over came to me and he said, don't worry about the scoreboard, don't play the situation, play the ball. If it's normal situation, you will hit this ball for 6. And that gave me enough boost. So every time I went there, I played my natural game. So it was great to work with Smokey and all these international players. When I turned to say a dressing room, there was 11 international players, sharing the dressing room, playing for England, and it was great learning experience for me. My test career unfortunately finished in 2001 on this ground, Old Trafford, and I never played test cricket afterwards. I was 25 at that time, so I really don't know about my game. So later on when I played county cricket and understand, how to play in these situations, like people coming from subcontinent, flat tracks, anything on your leg side, you try to hit on the leg side. So here, at first couple of games I find it really difficult for me, because every time I go and play towards the on and ball was taking edge and I got out, and then the likes of Rampy and Thopi and these guys, talking to them and sharing my thoughts with them, so I understand my game a bit more.
By the way, I should tell you that we've had a whole load of rain just dump itself on the ground since we've been talking, but now the clouds have lifted slightly. It's a little bit lighter. I think we might have a little sort of this undulating phase of a little bit of rain, then it's stopping again, another little bit of rain. It's not this really heavy set-in rain, so do not despair if you're hoping for more cricket today. I suspect that we might get lucky enough to have some. I would say that the chances are fairly high, but we'll be keeping an eye on it, don't worry. Just to turn back to Adam Hollyoake, because he's renowned as a captain of great invention and having a fantastic cricket brain. Didn't play a great deal of test cricket, but did captain England's one-day side, didn't he, for a while, and then just before the World Cup, as often happened in England's history, they sort of got a formula and then they threw it out the window and didn't use him. What was it, Mark, about Adam Hollyoake that marked him out as a different kind of captain?
Well, he has many attributes. First and foremost, just his backing for you, which I know might sound a very obvious thing, but when the captain comes to you and believes in you and
he says to go out and play your natural game, and as he did with Azhar. It means a lot. I remember ringing Adam Hollyoake about moving to Surrey, and it was very important to me that he wanted me at the club, because there was we were a little bit unsure. They were already a very strong side, and there was some talk that they didn't really need to add to their batting. So I rang Adam, and he was absolutely adamant. No, we would love you to come to the Oval, and we want you to come bat 3 and be a prominent player for the club, and that was very important to me. So I think he was a leader that really encouraged his players, gave them a lot of faith and confidence. In terms of him as an example, there's no job that he would ask you to do that he wouldn't do. He was in there at City Point off the spinner. He would bowl when the wicket was flat. He would go out and play shots when the team needed quick runs. And so he led by example brilliantly. But he was also a great tactician, and I think that's where tactically, he was a guy that could think on his feet. And you had to do that at the Oval, because to bowl people out twice at the Oval was not easy, and you couldn't. There were times where you couldn't just rock up and bowl top of off. You needed to make something happen, and he did that because he had two wonderful spinners in Ian Salisbury and Saqlain Mushtaq, but also players like Azam Mahmood, Jamil Ormond were very skillful in reverse swinging the ball. So when the pitch was dry, it was hot, and the conditions were right, they could make something happen as well. So I think Adam led an era there which was very successful, and it's a huge accolade to him that successful period. Yes, there were great players, but he led it brilliantly.
And he's well remembered for it, but he did, as you say, you mentioned a couple of players in there. We should also mention Martin Bicknell, of course, who was a mainstay of Surrey side for a long, long time.
Well, how he got 1,000 first-class wickets, playing 20 years at the Oval, I'll never know.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how he didn't play that many Test matches either, which may seem unusual. But you mentioned Saqlain Mushtaq. We're in a series here, England against Pakistan. Let's have a little look at Saqlain Mushtaq, because what a bowler he was. You said he invented the dooser. I remember watching a lot of Surrey matches actually on Cricinfo at work, and you would see Saqlain come on, and then you'd think, right, there's going to be a whole lot of wickets going to fall here in next to no time. And what was he doing, Azhar, that was just so different? Was it something that people hadn't done before?
No, he was absolutely a legend, He invented Dusra. I remember facing him first time in one-day game. He was playing for PIA, Pakistan International, and I was batting down the order, last 8 overs. So one end Saqlain was bowling, the other end Wasim. So you're not going to take chance against Wasim. So your eye is lit up when you see off-spinner bowling at that time. So I went to bat and I thought, okay, I'm going to have a slog sweep. I went for slog sweep. Ball was pitched on the leg stump and went through near my bat, and I said, what the hell was that?
Sort of went over your right shoulder.
Right shoulder, rather than spinning this way, it's a spin other way. I said, oh, maybe something. And he bowled me, I think, 3 balls, and I couldn't have idea what this guy is doing.
So you couldn't see it? The disguise?
No, because we never faced anything like that before, It's the first time you see it, because he was, I think, one of the only spinner with the clear action to bowl a dusra, because you can see so many times international players, he deceived with his flight of dusra. Adam Gilchrist, I remember here in Nottingham, he was bowled through the gate against him. You can't really see much, but in '95 when we toured New Zealand, and Saqlain Mushtaq was bowling in a Test match, A tour. So he was having a 7-2 field, 7 offside player and 2 on the onside. So you think, how he's going to do that? And he was so accurate and good about that. All the players, wants to play through onside, and he was getting caught behind or caught at short point and something like that. So it was amazing, it was a genius.
Just to be clear, what Az is referring to is you've got an off-spinner, and an off-spinner prevailing field is going to be 5-4-6-3 on the leg side, because that's the way the ball turns into the right-hander. So just doesn't matter. I guess you just can't compute it. Just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I must just say that in 1997 was the first time I came across Sack Lane, and I was playing for Middlesex, and in the first innings he came on and he had a mid-on and a deep square leg and then a 45 for the sweep, and no one really threw mid-wicket. He only had 3 players on the leg side, and I thought, well, this is an off-spinner, mate. You're going to get slog swept into the tavern. So I blocked a couple, and then I played this sweep shot and top edge, caught on the 45. That was me done. And in the second inning, it still hadn't worked out that he was bowling these different types of deliveries. And in the second innings, I came out and same thing. So he was bowling at the other end, but it was the same field. And I said to myself, okay, I won't sweep it. I'm just going to hit it with a straight bat through mid-wicket. First ball, he's run up, pitched it up on middle stump, and I'm trying to flick it through mid-wicket, leading edge, straight back to him. No, out first ball, and I was part of a hat-trick there as well. So, I mean, he cleaned us up for fun.
type of tales that come out of Pakistan cricket?
Because if you see in Pakistan, the coaching is not big enough in Pakistan. Now recently you find the educated coach, level 2, level 3 coaches. Before our time, you just go and play club cricket, or you go and play with your mates on the street, with the tape ball, and you find your way. Like for example, Malunga, he used to bowl at on the beach, so he find that action, when he was bowling round arm, so ball was skidding and going quicker. So that's the way he developed himself. That's why all the Pakistani guys, they play with the tape ball. That's why if you see all the Pakistani bowlers, they have a really quick arm. Because with the tape ball, you have to bowl a bit quicker. Like yesterday we were saying, Mahmood, from England, Sakib Mahmood, he got a whippy action. If you see Naseem Shah, he got a really whippy action. If you see his action, he take this front arm way back and then do it from there. And same sort of archers, that's where they generate the pace. So you need to find the way, what type of bowler you are. You generating pace from your run-up, or like the great Wasim Akram, a short run-up, quick arm, and bowl with a shoulder. So, and these things you can only find out when you're playing on the street and stuff like that. So these guys be never overcoached. In England, from the young age, you've been coached by certain coaches, and they said, okay, you have to do that, or your action is not right, so you can't do that. So you have to be very aligned and very much, going into the game. So in Pakistan, people are natural instincts come in, and that's how they bowl.
You can probably hear on the RFX microphone, the rain it's come properly now. It's a serious, straight down deluge. But I will report also that the flags are still fluttering heavily, which is a positive sign. Last couple of days at Manchester, when it has rained, it's been quite close and still and set in. This is spectacularly magnificent rain, it has to be said, but I don't know how long it's going to last. It's fairly horrible, but it's one of those strange situations where the light is oddly improving at the same time as the rain is absolutely cascading down. It's a curiosity. I've actually seen so much rain in Manchester that there are 9 or 10 different words and conditions I've got for it, but as a fairly good indicator of just how bad it is. Oh, hang on, what I've been shown, 20 degrees, a break in the rain in 15 minutes, I'm told. A break in the rain. I suppose that's the best one going for in Manchester. There will be a break in the rain. They're not telling us how long the break in the rain will be, but I think we will get a break in the rain. And away to my right, there used to be a whole bunch of visible buildings. I believe the buildings are still there, but I couldn't say for certain because I can't see them. So that's a fairly good indicator of how grey it is. And away to my left, a similar thing applies. So we're sort of in the cloud at the moment, but it will pass. We will be positive, we'll remain positive if you're just joining us. It is raining. Tea has been remain positive if you're just joining us. It is raining. Tea has been taken by now, been and gone. Pakistan 121 for 2, having won the toss, elected to bat. They lost 2 wickets sort of after the first hour of play and before lunch. Abid Ali bowled by Archer for 16, and Azhar, the captain, LBW to Chris Woakes for a duck. Since lunch though, Babar Azam moved on serenely, beautifully. It was great to watch, to his 50, unbeaten on 52 from 71 balls, and Shan Masood, just as important a job for his team, but perhaps not quite so pleasing on the eye. 45 not out from 134 balls, 2 wicket takers there, Chris Woakes and Jofra Archer. I'm with Mar Ramprakash and Azhar Mahmood. Sorry, I'm Azad out. Okay. We're talking about a wide range of things. We've been chatting a little bit about Surrey. We'll probably talk about that a bit more in a moment, but currently we're talking about Pakistan and where they unearth these quite brilliant players from, and about coaching, crucially. Now I know, Mark, you've started a new role, and it's a role that's kind of germane to what I'm about to ask now, because English cricket has derived quite a lot of players in the last couple of decades, but it always has, but a higher proportion of players recently from public schools. Public schools have the facilities and they have coaches, and people get coached very early. And what Azhar has been talking about is, use the phrase overcoached, but not saying that everybody is overcoached, but there is something about English cricket which can sometimes move dangerously towards homogeneity, can't it? Where everybody has got the same kind of action, everybody bats in the same kind of way. Whereas in Pakistan, you're seeing a lot of really unique, idiosyncratic cricketers who have created their own method, and in so doing, have invented through trial and error and things that work for them. That's obviously a strength of the Pakistan system. Is it a strength of the England system that we do have those facilities and coaches?
Well, look, I think it's a fascinating debate as to, there's this 10,000 hour rule, which I can't remember the name of the person now.
Gladwell, is it? Malcolm Gladwell?
Okay, yes, it may well be actually, who said about, an individual has to have a lot of 10,000 hours of play, or where they're uninhibited and they can just enjoy exploring and working out the game for themselves. And that may take place in the park or, on a bowling machine, whatever it is. But they're sort of driving their own practice. And then, of course, how much guidance do you get as well in terms of making the game easier for yourself, doing the basics well. So there's this perennial debate about how much coach intervention there is and should be with players. And, of course, I think it depends on the player. Very often. I have seen coaches be very dogmatic in telling, youngsters of 7, 8, 9-year-olds, how to do it. This is how you do it. I'm not a great fan of that. I think to show people the right, a correct grip and an orthodox stance and setup, I think is a good thing. Because I think it does help in the long run to sort of do the basics well, and if you can present the full face of the bat in the V, you're sort of making it more likely that you can be successful, or at least stay at the wicket for a period of time, so that when the bad ball comes along, you can give it a whack. So I do like coaches helping players to understand the basics, but then they've got to interpret it in their own way. At the same time, good coaching is sometimes not saying anything, and that is really difficult. Because you sort of feel like you've got to justify your job, but actually players finding out through failing sometimes is really powerful, because the best players learn quickly and they decide what they must do and what they must not do, and so I think getting to know the person, getting to know how they play the game, are they good enough to make their own decisions, and then questioning them about it as well. And of course you need time to do that, but I think coaching is walking a fine line between being instructive and helping people understand the basics of the game, but also allowing freedom for the individual to find their own way.
We're going to come back to this in a second, but I've just been passed a crucial note by our producer. We have to be playing by 6:09. This is very intriguing. I think this is because of the 9-minute break that we had earlier. I don't quite know why it means that, but it does. Okay, so that's just a fact. So we have to be playing by 6:09, even though we can continue to play until 7:30. If we could only get out at 6:10, then we wouldn't be able to play till 7:30. If we can get out at 8 minutes past 6, we can play till 7:30. This is an argument that you may want to take up with the ICC. Don't take it up with me. I am just the messenger. It sounds crazy, but there was a reason when they came up with it. Just not necessarily one that was entirely thought through. But that's true of an awful lot of things at the moment. So it's part of the zeitgeist. What it really means in practical terms is that rain probably has to clear by about 5 to give the ground staff a chance to mop up. We do have a tiny puddle, but that's all. I mean, despite all that rain, there's a very, very tiny patch of standing water next to the cover that's nearest to me at Brian Estate, on the left-hand side of it as I look at it. and there's a name for sponsor, Lifebuoy, which somehow appears more germane than normal, given that it's raining in this way. But the covers have got a fair bit of rain on there, and no ground staff out there at the moment, but that deluge has gone through. ground staff out there at the moment, but that deluge has gone through, and I think our engineers are absolutely right when they said there was going to be a break in the rain then. Maybe they can give us, if they can keep more of this information coming, because it's so deliciously accurate. Earlier we got very, very excited because they think that they've worked out what the light meter reading has to be on the balcony below us to take people off for bad light. And because bad light is a thing that bedevils cricket and drives fans mad, if we actually do have a reading, then we can always just, we can send Henry Moran down there in a moment it looks a bit dark and get him to sort of, Abside off the balcony with a light meter. He's done madder things. He's been up the floodlights at Perth. It was very amusing. He gave us a report from the top of the floodlights at Perth, and his voice had gone up by about 6 tones. I'm fine. Give my love to my mother. Anyway, with a bit of luck, we might know more about that. Now, the clouds really are lifting, and the buildings that I said were entirely invisible 10 minutes ago are now resplendent, beautiful, tall tower blocks away to my right. And away to my left, I can see some smoking chimneys. So things are getting back to normal, and that great big grey patch has passed, and I would say, wouldn't you guys, I think the rain has actually stopped. If I look down below me, it's just the drips from the roofs, so I think we're in with a good chance. We're going to keep our fingers crossed. We're talking a little bit here about coaching, because apart from this, we have 2 coaches with us. Mark Rabrakash has coached England. Azhar, you have coached Pakistan, in a bowling capacity and a batting capacity, so we cover every base here apart from fielding. Now on the bowling front, you showed me some really interesting footage and videos that will help us understand when bowlers are bowling well, when they're kicking up their knees and how their action is going. Mark was talking to us in the green room about people's techniques and noticing and being really, you were quite absolutist about it, but you say if somebody's standing in a certain way, then there's an inevitability of a shoulder coming around or hips not being able to drive into the ball. With bowling actions, they're so idiosyncratic, they're so different, aren't they? You look at someone like, as you mentioned, Malinga and Jeff Thompson and then Richard Hadley and Dennis Lilly. I mean, these are so different. How do you coach a bowler? That sounds like a crazy thing to ask, but bowler, you get 2 bowlers and they're both highly effective at pitching the ball where you want them to pitch it, but they have a completely different method of doing that. So how are you trying to improve their game?
For me, I think it's really important, who you're coaching. And, if someone is been bowling for 4, 5, 6 years, he developed his action and everything. If you want to change his action or anything, so it might be not work for him. When I remember when I went back to Pakistan and coached Pakistan, there was quite a few, Shah, Afridi. He hasn't played any first-class cricket when he came to me. Likes of Hassan Ali, he played only 20-odd first-class game, and Mohammad Amir never played a first-class game, and Naseem as well. So these guys are totally different. So you need to find the way, because these guys, alignment is the main thing. You got a nice rhythmical action, and then take off and weight transfer. So you need to see which way the alignment are. So their alignment was all over the place. So we worked hard to get them proper aligned. That allowed them to stay on the front leg and deliver the ball from the top, so get more bounce. I can give you example of Hassan Ali here. I showed you footage last night, because when he delivered because he's not a tall guy. If you're 6'2", that's fine, because his height is 5'7", 5'8", and when he's bending his knee, so he's not getting enough bounce on a flat track, when pitch is right. So he's ideal to hit through the line. But we work on his brace leg, and he was before the Champions Trophy, so his leg was braced, not totally braced, but he was 6 inches taller than normally he was releasing the ball, so which really helped him to become a number 1 bowler in the world at that time. And that shows you can change, you can trigger things around, like in batting stance, someone is right eye dominant, and if he's standing like this, so he will miss that ball if it's coming on his left shoulder. So you can see the mainly guys who stand slightly open stances, they are mainly right eye dominant, which most of the people don't know about that, like in Pakistan. But here, people understand, I'm a right eye dominant or left eye dominant, and they adjust their stance according to that. It's the same thing in bowling, It's really important, your alignment, shoulder alignment, hip alignment, and feet alignment are going towards the top. Alignment, hip alignment, and feet alignment are going towards the target. If anything is missing, if you see Waqar, Yunus or Naseem, when they take off, they rotate their whole hip. That's why they generate pace. If you see Abbas, so he's pretty much straight on bowler. So that's what fascinating about fast bowling. Everyone is different, so you need to find the way which is maybe it work for Naseem, maybe it doesn't work for Shaheen, Shah, Afridi. You need to find the right balance.
Recruitment of players, so getting people into cricket in Pakistan. I'm sort of coming back to a point that we've touched on a little bit before, but we often in England, here's another young, brilliant Pakistan fast bowler that hasn't come through an obvious system. Like in England, there's a clear pathway, isn't there? There's county under this, that and the other, there's MCC, London schools, what have you. And as we said earlier, it's often a bit easier, or not easier, but it's often a bit more obvious, the pathway, if they went to a public school, because they've got coaches who advise them to go one direction or the other. In Pakistan, players' pathway is a lot more varied, isn't it? Now, can you describe what that pathway looks like and sort of why it is?
There's no pathway in Pakistan, but with this new management, since Wasim Khan came into cricket board, and now they hired Nadeem Khan, ex-test cricketer, and Staklan Mushtaq in a national high performance center. They changed the name from NCA, National Cricket Academy, to High Performance Center. So now they have proper coaches there. So now they're doing the same system as England have, a pathway. So for example, they recognize 13 years or 14 years guys, so they will go through the pathways, so to go to under 16, to under 18, under 19, and they are doing that system in Pakistan. And now, because we used to have, I think, 17, 18 first class teams, so they cut down to only 6 teams in Pakistan, so first class team, so which means you have a quality cricketers playing in that first class games, not like a quantity. So that's really good thing PCB is doing it. Unfortunately, a lot of people back home, a first class cricketer lost their job, and they're not having enough income to support their family. That's one thing, but the system these guys are putting together, and they're putting more, giving more money to the first class cricketer to get good enough income for their family to run, and I think they are doing the great job.
Is there a danger with that? I mean, look, there's a lot of talk and conversation in this country about there being too many counties, and you guys, both of you know the county circuit inside out. Do you think that there are too many counties? There are 18 first-class counties here, and a lot of people have been saying, well, do we need to have quite that many if Pakistan are going in that direction? Is that where cricket's going to go?
Well, sorry, Rampy, can I come? Because in Pakistan, here, county cricket have their own structure, own departments, and they look after themselves. In Pakistan cricket, there was 18 associations playing there, and a PCB, the Pakistan Cricket Board, is funding them to play there. So it's a big budget involved in that. So PCB cut down that route.
So it's not so thinly spread.
Yeah. So now what they're trying to do, they have the 6 teams, so 6 first-class teams, then the second 11, you say, and then the under 19 under those umbrella, like the county county does here. So they are doing that sort of things, which will help, not now, but in the future, that you will find the right pathway to get it. You got a 16-year guy who picked up for Pakistan, for example. You will see them playing for Pakistan in future. Before that, you see will see them playing for Pakistan in future. Before that, you see so many under-19 players pick for Pakistan. Suddenly they come in and they play one game here and there, and then they're gone.
But you don't want to, I suppose, get so overstructured that you lose those sort of magical players that, it's too obvious, it's too simplistic to say they arrive out of nowhere. Obviously they don't, because they have been playing. But, participation levels in Pakistan are probably higher, aren't they, amongst
of that.
Yes.
Tons of police officers. Bizarre by today's standard security operation, in which, bless them, all West Indies fans ran on in the last over, as you remember, and
the blue line couldn't really stand
Lillian
up.
Thompson went on running back and forth, and nobody knew what to do, and the blue line was just standing there, its arms out, thinking, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now, as far as I can see. That it is so much more sophisticated now, and such a sensible safety and security operation. And of course, somewhere like the Oval has a fantastic, I think they have hundreds and hundreds of stewards, and the vast majority of working with and in the crowd is done by stewards, and we only have a very few police dealing with kind of security issues, crime issues, if there is any social behaviour, which is unlikely, of course, at cricket, but not impossible if somebody's had a bit too much to drink, and there'll be just a very few in the ground at any one time, more available if required, and then we'll be doing things at the end, when people are coming in and leaving, and making sure that around the ground is safe and secure.
It's the opposite, and you just don't really see it all going on. That's the beauty of it. So in those early days then, Cressida, who were you looking at as your cricketing heroes then?
Well, I grew up in Oxford, and we used to walk to the university parks. Absolutely, we used to walk to the university parks every day when I was not at school, and I met Imran Khan when I was, I think, 11, maybe 12, on the boundary. And my friend Ruth met Jeffrey Boycott, and but I'll sit with Imran if I may.
Yeah, I think you probably would be wise. I think you had the better option.
Oh, there we go. And we met several of them, of course, but these were the ones we both became very fixed on. And I actually wrote a letter to Imran Khan, and you won't believe this because I haven't got the evidence now, but he wrote back and said, "You're my first fan." So that's one of my claims to fame,
So
so then I got he was a student, of course, at Oxford. He was 18, I think, or 19, and I got very keen on Pakistan. And although we didn't have a telly, when I was not at school, I would go down to any building I could find that had a telly, and I would just watch. And then Ruth and I started coming to cricket. So I
Ruth and I started coming to cricket. So, I was there. I was here when Zahir Abbas scored 200 and whatever it was.
Right, so you supported Pakistan.
Majid Khan and Safraz, I think, may have been playing, and the Mohammeds was in Barry, absolutely. And I've always. I've always had a soft spot for Pakistan, absolutely, ever since. I've got the green shirt and the green cap.
And it was Imran who did it?
I'm afraid I suspect I'm not the only one over the years.
Probably not. What did you say in the letter, can you remember?
I can't. I mean, it was just, I wanted his autograph and I wanted to tell him I was a fan.
Yeah.
And he just wrote back and said, "You're my first fan."
It's amazing what's happened to him now, isn't it?
Extraordinary, yeah. Absolutely incredible. And I don't want to get involved in Pakistan politics, but for anybody here involved in thinking about security, I worked in counter-terrorism. We work really closely with all countries all over the world, and we just counter-terrorism. We work really closely with all countries all over the world, and we just always want, for example, Pakistan to be as safe and secure as it can be. And it is a country that's had a lot of difficulties over the years, and it's got a big Pakistani population in the UK.
There's a lot of hope in India that Imran's coming out now that helps solve things between those two countries, though. With course cricket being a bit of a link.
That would be amazing.
Yeah,
it would be amazing. Yeah.
So Pakistan then. What about their cricket? Because if you're a Pakistan fan, it's a bit of a roller coaster.
It is. Oh, absolutely. At best, I think the word I sometimes hear you use is mercurial. And I've been up and down and
it rather nails it, doesn't it?
With Pakistan. To be fair, I'm basically a cricket fan, and I will go and watch anybody, and I loved seeing England do well. But in that way, that it's nice to have a team that you really support and look out for. Pakistan's my team, and they sometimes have bewildered us and looked great and then collapsed, and it's been very up and down over the years. It really has. I was at Lord's when they were winning this year. I was at Lord's 2 years ago when they won. So I've seen them in their highs, but I've also seen them when we've had our head in our hands. Pakistan fans.
Okay, so therefore, how do you feel in 2010 when the spot betting business happened with Mohammad Amir? You've put yourself out there as a Pakistan supporter. How did that feel?
That's where my sort of personal life and professional life came together in a sense, because I do like cricket and I had a job to do, and I was the assistant commissioner that kind of led that investigation.
So you actually investigated that?
I did. Yeah, I did. And I suppose it is one of the things about being a police officer. There's a rather perhaps overused phrase, but it's very important to us, which is that we act without fear or favour. whatever, we do the job we have to do. And I've been involved in investigating a number of different issues and people, for criminal offences, where they're either people I've known well, or you just have. And I'm sure my officers, a different example, my officers would sometimes be facilitating protest where you've got arguing parties, different sort of protesters, and the police job is very clear, to keep the peace and to make sure there isn't disorder and to facilitate lawful protest. And they may be, as individuals, feeling, I have much more sympathy as a person with this group than that group. They mustn't show it. You have to get on with it. So back to that day, it was extraordinary.
Sad for you.
Well, I'd been at Lord's on the Thursday and I'd seen the no balls bowled, and I turned to my friend Sue and said, what on earth's going on here? But I hadn't thought any more of it other than that. Just like extraordinary.
They're so obvious though, weren't they?
Well, you're the real expert. I didn't. Maybe they look even more so to people like me now afterwards, but I do remember thinking that's very strange. Maybe they look even more so to people like me now afterwards, but I do remember thinking that's very strange.
Well,
but nothing more than that.
I was on with Phil Tufnell, and so as bowlers, you look at how far, particularly Mohammad Amir actually. Asif was a bit craftier, and so his was actually much smaller, as it were, and not quite so. But Mohammad Amir, and tough as an iron, said, "Well, how is that possible? Because
right."
That's, 2 feet or so feels like 3 yards when you're a professional, and you wouldn't let the ball go because all you're doing is giving a run to the opposition. So it just didn't make sense. We weren't able to really say anything because in those days, I mean, would we do it now? Possibly now. But then I think as commentators and observers, we weren't quite secure enough to go on and say this is dodgy. Sure. But I think possibly difficult. But you saw the no balls.
I saw the no balls. Didn't think anything more than how extraordinary Pakistan. I don't know what's going to happen. And then on the Friday night, the commissioner called me and said, Chris, I've been contacted by a newspaper and they say they're going to run this enormous corruption story and they won't say what section it's in. And we agreed that I would go to the newspaper the following morning with a hand-picked team of sensible people. I didn't know what it was about at all. I just knew it was to do with corruption. And I went there and with my team, and they started to show us the material that they had gathered. And I realised fairly quickly with my senior investigating officer that we needed to secure the evidence, obviously, before the newspaper published, because clearly, to do anything other than that would risk the evidence being lost and massive criticism and failure of an investigation that ought to be taking place. So we, amongst other things, at about 4 or 5 o'clock, I drove quietly into Lord's with my team up into the pavilion and went to meet David Collier, Chief Executive, I think.
He was, ECB, yes.
He didn't know what I was going to say, and I just said, this is the situation, and we need, my team will need to go into the dressing room and do a search of the dressing room, which he facilitated. And
what are you looking for?
Fantastic. Well, evidence that we believed we would find that would show that money had been taken, and for a particular reason, obviously. Anyway, fast forward, as you know, sadly for cricket, 3 cricketers were convicted, and it was a I think a very proportionate and sensible investigation. Very sad for the game, but needed to be done. And
we were commentating at the other end, and you had no idea that you and your team were searching the dressing rooms in the Lord's Pavilion. It was incredible.
Yeah.
Did you find?
We did.
Can you say no? We did find.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how the case developed, we found relevant material here. It's not here at Lord's. We found relevant material, and again in the hotel rooms and elsewhere, and that was really important. And of course, that could potentially have got lost if we'd waited till the end of play, or even to the end of the game, where the whole thing would have been lost probably.
Did you feel comfortable following a newspaper sting?
We were very careful about it. We were. I've now started, a girl will say, I'm now starting to think about being a police officer. So I guess just being there makes people think, well, actually, I could have a go at that. And if it inspires a few young people, that's great. And actually, here we are in London. It's the most diverse city on the planet. And to have a modern feel about the police service, I think, well, people are not all kind of the stereotypical expected police officer. And I think that's good. I think it means that the public can see that the Met is a very modern and diverse kind of setup, and is there for them in a positive way.
Talk about London. I mean, I'm an occasional visitor here. I only pop down for the cricket. How safe is it? How safe is London at the moment?
Well, I think London is a very safe city, as if you compare it with many, if not most, of the global cities. You compare it with every city in the United States, for example, big city in the United States. It's incredibly safe, and most people will go about their business feeling, totally untroubled by crime or violent crime, throughout their visit, definitely as a tourist or coming to see a sports event, or if they're resident as well. But we have had some horrible things happen in the last several years, which have been very high profile and have involved in really nasty violence. And so that's my biggest operational priority, is bearing down on that violence.
Gang violence, terrorist violence. I mean, do you separate them?
I do sort of define it quite broadly. So of course we've had terrorism, the terrible attacks last year, and the country faces a significant threat, as you know, and it has done for a long time. So that's a big part of all our work all the time. But I do define it broadly. The knife and gun crime that has been very high profile, but also domestic violence, sexual assaults, human trafficking. There's a wide range. Also domestic violence, sexual assaults, human trafficking. There's a wide range of things. I think the violent crime and terrorism have been the things that people have been most been on people's minds for obvious reasons recently, and violent crime on the streets. And when I arrived as commissioner, we had moped-enabled crime was incredibly high, mostly phone snatches, but very unpleasant, and some of them very violent as well. Glad to say that's down about 50% now, but we've got a lot to do to make people not just be safe as is reasonably possible in a huge cities, enormous numbers of people seething about all the time, and feel safe. I want people to feel safe.
How do you cope with that pressure of that, though? I mean, you just mentioned, you rattled off all sorts of areas of crime there. That's you're sitting on top of the whole pyramid, aren't you? How do you deal with that? I mean, your phone, presumably, you've got some sort of buzzer or something about you now that's going to go off, and off you go. And how does that feel? How do you live with that?
Well, I've been a police officer, not completely continuously, but mostly for nearly 35 years now. I love it. It makes me, very happy. I enjoy every minute of my police work, even when I am dealing with something horrible or tough for the individuals affected. Doing the job as well as I can with a great team, gives me lots of kind of satisfaction. Wish it hadn't happened, but if it has happened, I'd rather be there than not there. So, like, the terrorist incidents last year, I've as a leader, police leader, I know from my retired colleagues, everybody wants to help, and you'd rather be there. So I feel that I've got a good team. There's 40,000 people in the Met. I've got some great officers. They're incredibly capable. I do believe we've got probably the best police service in the world, and they're always learning. They're always getting better, trying new tactics, doing new stuff. People come and visit us from all over the world, and so I feel very confident in them, and that's the most important thing. They're great people, and I feel very confident in a lot of our structures and systems, and the way we deal with major incidents, and the way we deal with, God forbid, if there is one, a homicide. And therefore I don't sit at home listening to Test Match Special, worrying about what is happening in the town. I don't. I know they will call me if they need me, and that will be rare, because they're really good people who know what they're doing. And I do work hard. I am present a lot. I'm out and about around London all the time, and I do lots of different things to try to understand how the public are feeling and how my staff are feeling. But I'm a relaxed person as well. I feel very calm about it, and I do think it would be very hard to do the job if you were a worrier. I'm not complacent. I hate the fact that there's violent crime in London. I'm doing my damnedest together with my teams to reduce it. But I enjoy every minute. I enjoy every day. And I enjoy my sort of pastimes like cricket.
Yeah, just a last thought, and we're going to talk about cricket again in a second. Are we ever going to win this? Especially the question of the sort of these terrorist activities around. Can you see the day when actually that battle is won?
I mean, this is a city, this is a country that's been dealing with terrorism in various forms for a long time. Certainly throughout, if I can put it this way, our lifetimes we've been challenged by terrorism in some forms. And I think the current threats, from so-called international terrorism, but often people who are inspired and just look at something on the internet and go and do something quite quickly, that's the primary sort of area that concerns us, because we've got some extreme right-wing terrorism as well. There's lots of different possible areas that we have to kind of really be alert to. But in terms of the international terrorism, so-called, I'm sure this is something that is going to be with us for, I'm sorry to say, for many years to come, a generation or two, I suspect. Yeah, and I think that would be what most people would predict. Just looking at the way in which Al-Qaeda managed to achieve what it did, and then Daesh managed to achieve what it did, and the levels of support that are in various parts of the world, and the ease. Sorry, I keep pointing at your computer screen, but the ease with which people can be, particularly vulnerable people, can be seduced into.
And that leads on to social media. And it does a lot of good things. I know that this last year with my wife. But is there a way of controlling it? Do you think it should be more controlled? Should there be some? I don't know how you do it quite, but this is clearly where a lot of this stuff is happening, isn't it?
I mean, we've been talking quite a lot about obviously terrorist material on the net, child sexual exploitation on the net, and indeed some aspects of how violent crime is encouraged or happens more quickly because of social media. And if I look back, the net was the first place in which we started to work with companies to take material off the net.
Right.
And they're doing it all over the world now, and now the companies are doing it themselves for us, and that's the way it probably needs to be. So many years we've taken hundreds of thousands of bits of terrorist material off the net, and now with the clever algorithms and their abilities, they can stop it almost before it appears sometimes, which is great. And we are working really closely with the companies. They certainly are doing incredible things technologically. They're doing amazing things to communicate, to join people up. There's lots of benefits, as you say. I think many people would feel that they were probably a little bit slow to think harder about their, what I would call kind of social responsibility. But they do have some significant practical and on occasion really difficult legal issues because of being global and based often in the States. And so we work closely with them, and I'm hopeful that in the future they will be doing more and more and more of this crime prevention. Just as I want the Oval to be making sure that it is sensibly preventing crime, and I want the public to be involved in policing and telling the police how to be and preventing crime in their own household or their own company. I think social media companies are doing a lot more now. In the future I'd like to see them doing even more, and I'm having, I personally and many others, I know the Home Secretary, we're having very constructive conversations with them.
Oh, look at this.
Yes, here we are. I have.
You brought it with a
not made by me, Jonathan.
No,
I know it doesn't qualify as a cake at all since I didn't make
it. No, of course it does, because you've brought...
But here we are, right.
Lots of different components to this.
This is called a chocolate brownie cake.
Okay.
And it's made by Miriam, or Mims as we know her, who is a PCSO, Police Community Support Officer in World's End in London. Her son is going to pass out of the training school as a police constable soon. Mims has made the teas for the Metropolitan Police cricket team for at least 12 years, Saturday and Sunday, and she wanted you and I wanted you to have a cake. I am no wicketkeeper, no baker, but I've brought a cake anyway.
And you haven't dropped it? Which is
to be fair, I didn't have to carry it very far.
but this
yes, and then there's a great story here.
Right.
So this is a blue. This is edible, I think, and I'm hoping that's edible, but be careful. And then this is a blue light. As you can see, it's a cover for a light, and it's taken off the top of a Panda car.
Really?
And Mims's Uncle Reg stole it from his Panda car when he retired from the police. That is, of course, a crime, but
Should
I have
be
charged. I've told Mims that we don't, in the Metropolitan Police, intend to go back too far into the past.
No, I think you're
I've
right.
just written that one off.
So you're not going to confiscate it?
No, I'm not, and nor am I going to let you have. I've just written that one off.
So you're not going to confiscate it?
No, I'm not, and nor am I going to let you have it. I think it's an artefact of some importance. Yeah.
So that's the old. That is the old powder
he
blue
took it off
light.
the top of his car. Yeah. I'm not encouraging my officers to take things home, by the way. But well done, Mims. She's a fantastic person, and of course, Met cricket is not probably quite what it was. You remember we play at Imber Court?
Yes.
Which is a lovely ground. Surrey used to play there quite often, and it's a wonderful ground. Great, very wide boundary. I think it's one of the widest boundaries.
It's where the public schools finals played too.
Right, but I'm afraid because of the sort of pressures that there are on policing, since about 2011, 2012, the Met cricket team is not. I was the president. Again, they didn't let me near playing. Don't worry, but it's not quite what it was.
No. Oh, look, Chris, I've really been fascinated by what you've had to say.
Oh, it's been lovely to see you.
I mean, you couldn't come in last time because the game was over too quickly.
It was, I'm afraid. It was, and I was very disappointed because I've listened, as I say, since the early 70s, and you're sort of part of my family life.
Yeah. What is it about the radio then?
Your voices are part of our families, like many people.
Like cricket on the radio, what does it do for you?
It's wonderful. It's just wonderful. It is like, it's like if you play, I used to play squash to a reasonable level, and after the match, you knew you were going to meet the other team, sit down and have it, and I'm sure the same is true here. Well, it's a bit more serious here, but you know you're going to sort of hear from the same people and talk the same, slightly, not that important, some of it, slightly inane in a way, some of it, no disrespect, it's going to be just
Excuse me, I've invited you into my office. You've described what I say is inane.
It's going to be calming and fun and interesting, and we enjoy what goes on between the commentators and the summarisers, and I do think TMS is not only a great institution, and I can hear the voices of people who've gone even before you in my ears as I'm speaking, but one thing I've loved about TMS always is the way it is very generous. I think the commentators have, they might be critical with a small c, but even Jeffrey can be quite critical, can't he? But he's generous. I think he's generous. Well, that's my word.
I've never seen generous from Jeffrey Woakes. Have you met him yet?
No, I've never met him.
Well, I might reserve that pleasure for you, and then you can make up your own mind if it's generous or not.
You see, the thing is, it's just sport, isn't it?
It is.
It's incredibly important.
It's not life and death.
It isn't life and death, and people are having fun, and you're obviously having fun. And when a great player does badly, or a debutant makes a frightful fluff of something, you aren't horrible to them, and I think that's important. I really think that's important. I suppose it makes it easier for me to view. I get cross when I watch sports commentators who are always saying they could do it better than the people now, and they're hopeless and they're making lots of mistakes. I just think that's ridiculous. I listen to it. I just think that's ridiculous. I listen to Cookie say, and he's been a fantastic cricketer, hasn't he? And he's obviously had some tougher times as well. And I just heard him say, I may not be the most talented, but I've made everything of what I could do. Well, they're all incredibly talented.
Yes.
They don't need knocking.
No, they don't.
thanks for coming.
Thank
Chris,
you.
it's
It's been
lovely.
fun. It's been really good fun.
Lovely
Thank you
to
very
have
much
you. Thanks,
indeed.
Nicky.
Thank
We're about
you.
to start here. If you're not careful, you're going to be commentating on the game as well. And I'm sure it won't be a name. I'm not going to forget that. I'm not going to get over that. There we go. Lovely to listen back to that again. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick, of course, taking a view from the boundary. Well, I wish I could almost pick up from where that was saying about cricket starting and her commentating, because we've got the sun shining. We've got most of the sheets removed here at Old Trafford. But we've just had the result of the umpire's inspection, and they're saying they're going to inspect again at 5:30, which is really frustrating, and that a lot of heavy rain fell at that time. With it, it's all being cleared up. I've got Vic Marks chuntering to my left. Michael Vaughan might be off a longish run. We were talking about Bob Willis at lunchtime. What Michael was saying a few minutes ago, he might be at least 43 yards for a run. But that's the noise of the hover cover going away. And it's 121 for 2. Let's just put that out there as well, in case just joining us for the first time. With Shah Masood on 45, and Babar Azam, who came at number 4, he's got a lovely 52, a couple of really memorable strokes in that, one off the back foot in particular. I know you'll be reading all about in Victor's copy tomorrow. It was just possibly the shot of the summer, but you can fill your boots on that one. Victor, Abid Ali was bowled by Arch for 16, Azhar Ali was LBW to Woakes without scoring. That was at 43 for 2. So that's where we are now, 121 for 2, and it's all very frustrating, as it has been, I'm afraid, for a number of test matches up here this year. The first day has just been perpetually blighted, it seems, but the grounds in there I see is pointing to an area which he perhaps wants, well, I was going to say might want some of his colleagues to work on, but they're not working on anything. So I just got a feeling that it's almost down to nature to try and dry this out now. The super sopper has done its bit. It's taken away the excess water, but there's no one sort of beavering away and scattering sawdust or anything like that. And I wonder, I'll just put this out there, it's a half volley for Michael to slap to the boundary if he feels that way inclined, but the fact there isn't a crowd, and you haven't got 20,000 people who have paid 70 quid shouting, get on with it, I just wonder if that's, because it's not the first time this year where we've thought we've got a bit early for bad light here, or they seem a bit slow in getting out there. I mean, this is possibly the best part of the day at the moment, with the sun out, the floodlights are on, and nothing's happening.
Well, I've said for a while that Test cricket has to understand that it's an entertaining product, that there are TV companies around the globe that pay billions of pounds for it to take place. Radio stations and broadcast units pay a huge amount of money, yet it's the one of the 3 formats. T20 cricket, they'd be playing now. 50 over cricket, they would be playing now. But Test match cricket, it's almost that the conditions have to be perfect for the game to carry on. You're not telling me that there's any danger or any risk for the teams to be playing now. And if you have to cope with a ball that gets slightly wet, cope with it. You know, if you have to cope in conditions that are a little bit gloomy, as we saw in the last couple of test matches here against the West Indies, I'm afraid it's now you have to cope with it. Yeah. Whereas it's just the longer format that is the one format that, you know, we talk and we analyse and we write columns about. That's the one format that has struggled for many, many years, and it's the one format that continues to be dated about just not getting on and playing.
It's interesting because England players have been amusing themselves. I don't blame them at all for finding something to do. They're playing a heading game with a football which has involved heading on the balcony and knocking down to 2 or 3 players who are down there on the grass on the outfield, and they've been getting on and doing that quite happily. And if there were spectators here,
yeah, you're right,
I think they'd be going mad having seen that. Victor, you've been on the planet for even longer than most of us here. What's your assessment?
I agree. I'm totally frustrated. The umpires are saying the outfield is still quite wet. Well, it's not going to change much in 10 minutes anyway, so no. But they might as well get on with it. I mean, England will be fretting about the ball getting wet, but it's the luck of the draw, really.
Correct.
So I am as bemused as Michael, really. It just seems ridiculous. And they've got this fantastic drainage. There were puddles there. They've all disappeared. Get on with it.
I honestly think if there were spectators in here now,
this wouldn't be happening. We've got all the ground staff who work very hard. I'm not having a go at them at all. I'm making the point is that there appears to be nothing that they can do to improve the situation. They're just standing there.
But Aggers, until the directive comes from the ICC, I'm not blaming the umpires either, because they're probably under rules and regulations that stem from the top, that conditions have to be X or Y before you start. Until that changes from above, until that comes from the powerhouses at ICC towers, that these umpires that are operating the game, are told to do things differently to what we've seen, certainly of recent times. It'll continue to be this stage that the ground has to be almost perfect and the light has to be almost perfect, or you're not going to play.
There are, I think, too many directives, and I'm drawing on my experience at Southampton, where I spent a long time last week.
Yes.
And the weather was glorious, and the first innings were truncated because Ireland were usually bowled out, and we had this absurdity for about 3 hours of an absolutely beautiful late afternoon with not a cloud in the sky and a bit of an energy shortage on the planet. And the floodlights were blaring out for 3 hours and totally redundant, because I presume there is a directive said for the second innings of a day-night match the floodlights shall be switched on at the start of the second innings. I mean, it's equally exasperating.
Well, the problem, and the argument from players playing, obviously, will be, it's all right, you're not playing anymore. You'd have been the same when you played. Of course I would have been, but that was 12 years ago. We have moved on. The game has moved on, and it's a different time. There's different circumstances, there's different covering systems now, there's different drainage systems, and there's lights at every ground.
The irony is that I can see from the left that there's some dark cloud coming, which I don't think, looking at the radar, which aren't always right, these radars, but they give you a pretty good idea of what's going on. But they're not necessarily rain-bearing clouds, but they're dark. And so we're now we'll switch from having had half an hour of lovely sunshine to then, I suspect, fearing bad light, and that might be what keeps people hanging around. But